Tarot is a brilliant tool for helping you gain clarity and take control of your life. But if you're using it wrong, it may actually add to the confusion and end up holding you back. That's why I've put together these 16 brutally honest truths I wish I had known back when I started reading tarot. Hi, I'm Vervain. I'm a professional tarot reader. I've been reading cards and practicing magic for over 20 years now. I'm also the author of 2 magical books and the blog Vervain and the Roses, plus a stay-at-home mom, a singer-songwriter, and I could go on, but I think you're probably here for the tarot tips. So let's get started. Right, let's walk and talk. 1, tarot cards can't change your life for you. They can help clarify what's going on and help you decide what to do, but they cannot and they never will be able to make you do it. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And part of this is that if you already know what you're supposed to be doing, maybe just skip the reading and go do it. 2, the question is key. Asking the right question is so important. This cannot be overstated. Formulating the right question is at least as important as interpreting the answer. The value of the answer you receive is directly proportionate to the quality and the specificity of the question you ask. This is why when I do professional readings, probably at least half of the time will be me helping you figure out exactly what question should we be asking. I actually have a whole podcast episode about specifically crafting empowering questions. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you get a worksheet that will help you craft empowering questions. So there's that. And then I will be making a video, not just on this point, but on all of these points, going into a little greater detail and depth with more examples and stuff on all of these 16 points. But this video, we're just trying to go quickly and cover a lot of territory. So this brings me very neatly to number 3, which is don't skip the talking phase. Sometimes actually the most helpful part of a reading isn't even the reading, the part where you pull cards. It's the part where you're talking to the cards before you pull them to get your thoughts together, to get your thoughts in alignment, to even be able to ask the right question. And sometimes if you talk long enough, you'll talk your way right out of a problem. On the other hand, think of it kind of like a date or a relationship. If you skip the talking phase, you may get into bed with the cards and find that you're on totally different pages and neither of you know what the other is talking about, because you skipped the talking phase. However, in spite of all of this, doing all the talking and asking all the right questions and things, sometimes the question that you ask is not the same as the question that the cards choose to answer. It can be kind of hard to tell when this is happening. So like I said, I'll do a whole video just about this. But generally, if your intuition tells you that this is what's happening, that they're answering a different question, you can probably tell which question it is they're answering based on context. And just trust that the question they are answering is actually more important right now, and that that's what you really need to know. It may be like you think that you're asking about something, but like this other thing is actually what's going to affect your situation more directly. So worry about this first, then maybe worry about that. Or it may just be that they have a totally different message for you for like a different part of your life that they think you should be worrying about. Either way, listen to them. And then if you want to, it is okay to go back and like ask your original question again. But if it seems like they don't want to answer it the second time, leave it. Okay, number 5, you are not a neutral party. You are biased in your own life. Sometimes when we really want a particular answer to a question, or when we're unwilling to see certain truths about ourselves or a situation in general, we can misinterpret the cards because what they're telling us is not something that we are ready or willing to see. So if you're not truly open to hearing the truth and challenging your own existing beliefs, perspectives, and opinions, a tarot reading may not be helpful for you. You may just not be in the right place for it. And it may leave you even more confused than you were before you started pulling cards. Oh my God. Do you remember my last walk and talk video when we stopped to see a flower? Now there's like a bunch of them. All right, I got distracted. So if you're reading for yourself and you're lucky enough to get the sense that you might not be a neutral party and you might need another perspective, number 6, you can phone a friend. And this can be either a trusted friend who does or doesn't know anything about tarot. It helps if they know something about you and your situation. I say trusted because we're not all lucky enough to have friends who always want the best for us and always want to be totally honest with us. Sometimes we have friends who consciously or unconsciously are trying to sabotage us. So pick a friend that you actually trust to be like straight up with you. If you're not lucky enough to have one of those, work with a professional reader. I don't really have any tips on like how to find a professional reader that you trust. find someone that you vibe with. I'm a professional reader, so if you vibe with me, if you trust me, check out my website. I'm happy to help you either like read for you, or if you've done readings for yourself and you find yourself confused, I'm totally happy to step in and like help you get a new perspective on that. And then we'll probably do I'd probably do a reading for you to help bring in some more clarity there as well. But yeah, so you can turn to a trusted friend or a professional reader if you feel like you're biased and you need an outside opinion. However, please, number 7, don't crowdsource your readings. Don't do it. All the time I'm in a bunch of like witchy and tarot Facebook groups, right? And all the time I see people posting, oh, I drew these cards for myself and I think I know what they mean, but I'm not sure. Can I get your opinion? And they'll post like this like 8 or 10 card reading with zero context, nothing about like what they were asking or even what area of their life they were asking about. Nothing about what the spread was or like what each position is supposed to mean. It's just the picture of the cards and like, help tell me what this means. So this is not useful for 2 reasons. 1, you're not giving enough information if you do that. If you do give enough information, if you are like, this is my situation, this is what the spread is that I use, these are the precise questions that I ask, good on you. You're ahead of like 99% of the people who post these sorts of things in these groups. But you're still not going to be safe from the second reason why crowdsourcing your readings is a bad idea. And that is that if you get responses, you're going to probably get so many different responses that it's just going to be a too many cooks in the kitchen situation. You're not going to know which responses are right and which ones aren't, which ones apply to you and which ones don't. You're not going to know which ones are people projecting like what they would want or what they wouldn't want or what they're afraid of in their own lives. And the big danger here is that you're going to walk away even more confused, or possibly worse, you're going to end up just going with whichever people agree with what you want to hear or what you already thought, which if you're more of a neurotic person might be the opposite of what you want to hear. But in any case, it's not necessarily going to be the truth. So don't crowdsource your readings. And speaking of too many voices in your head, number 8, do not neglect your boundaries. Strong energetic boundaries are so important in all types of magic, but especially in divination, because in divination of any kind, you're basically opening yourself up to the spirit world for advice and information, guidance, direction, so on. So if your boundaries are really strong and really solid, when you open yourself up to this sort of divine guidance, you're likely to get divine guidance from spiritual beings or spiritual entities who truly want the best for you. However, if you're just kind of like excited about communicating with spirits and you just open yourself up to whatever, you're very likely to receive guidance from entities who do not want the best for you, entities who have very selfish motivations. So you can really get guided down some very wrong paths that way. And this can happen if you either just kind of like open yourself up to whatever, or this can also happen if you are specifically trying to communicate with specific entities. Even when you are successfully communicating with the entity you are intending to communicate with, spiritual entities are not necessarily required to be honest with you. So that's just something to keep in mind. That could be like a whole series of videos in itself, so I won't go too into depth there. But do not neglect your boundaries. They are very important, especially in magic like divination, where you are kind of giving over the opportunity to influence what you believe and how you think to the spiritual entities that are directing your reading. Okay, that brings us to number 9. More cards is not always better. You do not need a 10-card Celtic cross for every single reading, for every single question. A lot of questions can just be answered with 1, 2, or 3 cards. And like sometimes 3 cards is more than you need. A lot of times more cards just leads to more confusion, especially if you're not using a spread or asking really clear questions for each card as you go. And that's something that I can talk about in a video about like having conversations with your cards or like how to build a spread as you go. I'd be happy to do a video about that. I totally will. But basically you want to make sure before you're pulling every card that you know what little micro question every card is answering. And if you don't, and you keep pulling cards on your first vague question, or maybe you had a specific question, but your first card didn't quite answer it for you, and you're just like, please clarify, pull a card. Please clarify, pull a card. That doesn't make sense. Please clarify, pull a card. If you are just like pulling card after card after card to clarify, and it's still not making sense to you, that could be a good indicator that you're either in situation 4 or 5, 4 being the question the card's answer is not always the same as the question you asked, and 5 being you are not a neutral party. So that's 6, you can phone a friend. But yeah, your life is probably not the Da Vinci Code. You probably don't need 25 cards to answer the question about whatever's fucked up with your life, you probably need to hear one thing that you don't want to hear and then go do at least one thing that you don't want to do. And going back to point number 2, ask a more specific question and you'll get a more specific answer. If you're pulling more cards because your answer's not making sense because you asked a really vague question, ask a better question. On this same note, number 10, more readings is not always better. Sometimes what you need to do is put the tarot cards down and touch some grass. Touch the grass. It's good for you. It's good for your soul. Stop asking the cards what to do over and over and over and start doing what the cards are telling you to do. Or if you're not really sure what the cards are telling you to do, think of like one thing, literally one thing that you know you should be doing and go do it. You don't need to know the whole path forward. You just need to know the next right step to take. And sometimes you want to know the whole path forward and you feel like the cards aren't giving you a path forward. Maybe that's because everything is so fucked and there's so many variables in the air and there's so much mess and confusion in your fucked up life, with all due respect, that even the cards don't know what the whole path forward is for you, because everything that you want might change when you gain the clarity that you will gain from taking that one next right step. So instead of doing your 25th reading on the same question in the same week, put the cards down and go do something useful with your life, okay? And then when you've done something and the situation has changed, then come back and do another reading if you need to. Okay, for one final uncharacteristically anti-maximalist take from me, number 11, more decks is not always better. You do not need a million tarot decks. I'm talking to myself right now. More decks is not always better. Ask me how I know. And I fully grasp the hypocrisy of this statement coming from me. I really do. Trust me. Like I said, these are 16 brutally honest truths I wish I'd known before I started reading tarot. Not that I've always known all along because I'm perfect and have no flaws. That said, not every deck is the same. Different decks do have different vibes. And I like to think of them kind of like friends. So 11 and 12 kind of go together here. Because having 3 close friends to talk to about a situation who all have different perspectives and different takes, that can be really helpful. But there's really no such thing as having 100 close friends. And I think it's kind of the same way with decks. I'm not saying that decks can replace friends, okay? You need friends and decks. You need friends more than you need decks. I know that may sound odd coming from me, but friends are important too, okay? But I do think that decks are a little bit like friends. They have their different personalities. So there is some truth to the idea that like more than one deck is better than one deck. Although if you're a minimalist, one deck can absolutely be enough. And I am not someone who is allowed to tell you that you can't have at least a few decks. I am just trying to tell you that at a certain point, it becomes a collection because you want to have a collection, not because it'll improve your ability to have great readings if you have more decks. That brings us to point 13, which really hurts. This one really hurts me personally, and that is that pretty does not always equal good. The most beautiful decks are not always actually good decks to read with. You and I may have different opinions about what's pretty, and you and I may have different experiences about what's a good deck to read with. But definitely, I have decks in my collection that I think are just absolutely gorgeous, that I would love to be able to read with all the time. And I've never gotten a good reading with them. I've never felt connected to them. And it pains me greatly to not be able to read well with them because they're just so gorgeous. I could just look at them all day. I love it. And I hate it. And on the other end of the spectrum, I absolutely have decks that, based on the art alone, I never would have connected to them. Like, I don't even really like the art, but the readings that I've done with those decks are some of the best readings that I've ever done for myself. They're just some of the most like straightforward, clear, direct, honest and true readings that I've ever had, to where it's like, okay, you deserve a permanent spot in my collection because you are clearly telling me the things that I need to hear in ways that I need to hear them. So yeah, pretty doesn't always equal good. Ugly doesn't always equal bad. Okay, the next two are about the guidebook. Number 14 is, you do not have to keep every guidebook. Almost every deck comes with some sort of guidebook. If it just comes with a shitty little white book, or LWB as we call them in the industry, with like one keyword per card, and you're past that, or you have access to Google, you're allowed to throw that away, okay? Especially if you have a couple decks. Like, you don't have to keep that with your cards. You don't have to keep the title cards with your cards. They make great bookmarks. And also, some decks come with like pretty books, but when I go to read the guidebook, like there's a lot written there and I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just gonna use my intuition. So that's number 14. Throwing the guidebook away is not a sin. You don't have to keep every single one. Number 15 is, you are never too skilled to check the guidebook, especially a good one. You're never too old, you're never too wise, you're never too good at tarot to check the guidebook. Sometimes, even when you have a complete encyclopedia of tarot in your head, just seeing some words on a page that weren't what you immediately thought of can really unlock something for you. And sometimes a guidebook has some really specific insight from the person who wrote it that isn't really what's always thought of to be like what goes with that card. And so it may be some really unique phrase that isn't in any of the other tarot books that you've read, that isn't immediately unlocked by your intuition upon seeing the card. But when you see that phrase, you're like, oh, that's why I drew this card. This card wasn't really making sense to me, but then I saw that phrase on the page, and now it's all coming back to me now. All right, and that brings us to our last point, which is that clarity improves with perceptual distance, also known as the thing that you might need to help your reading make sense might just be time. Perceptual distance can also be, like I said earlier, phoning a friend, asking someone for an opinion who's not so close to the situation, who's not directly involved in the situation that you're reading about. That is perceptual distance. But also, as I just talked about in my Lessons from the Six of Pentacles video, which I think I later retitled, I Was Pouring from an Empty Cup. I'll link it below. It took me 7 years to understand this card, the Six of Pentacles, that I just kept drawing over and over and over. And I kept being like, I'm pretty sure I get it. I'm pretty sure I'm already doing what this card is telling me to do. But obviously, if I was doing what it was telling me to do, it wouldn't still be telling me to do it. So there must be something that I'm not getting. And now, like 7 years later, looking back, I'm like, oh, I get it. So sometimes it's not your fault. You're not infinitely wise, and no one expects you to be infinitely wise, you know? You're only human. It's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out. And you're not a bad tarot reader just because pulling a few cards didn't suddenly make everything make sense and your life all fall perfectly into order. Sometimes it just takes time. No, you just have to wait. Said love don't come easy. It's a game of give and take. You can't hurry love. Okay, so that's my 16 brutally honest truths about reading tarot that I wish I'd known back when I first started, but I know them now, and now you know them too, so now we're all better off. Thank you for listening this far. If you still want help with your readings or someone to do a reading for you, I happen to be a professional tarot reader who knows all of the 16 things that I just laid out for you. So potentially I could be of service to you. I offer a couple different types of readings, but my most popular and my most convenient readings for me and for you are, they're currently listed as basket case readings, but I'm gonna list them with other like formats as well. And I just deliver them by like an audio file and photographs. So you write to me and tell me what your situation is and what you wanna know, and then I tap into that. And then you get that delivered to you via Google Drive as an audio file of your whole entire reading and the interpretation and everything, plus several photos. Yeah, so check out the description for some interesting links. If you listen to this far, I will absolutely be going back and doing videos where I go into greater depth on each of the 16 points that we discussed here today. So if you want to see those videos when they come out, go ahead and hit the old subscribe button down here, and that way, you know, you'll be subscribed. Not that YouTube will actually put the videos in your home feed. If you actually want to know about the videos when they come out and not actually have to look for them on your subscribed tab, then go ahead and also hit the little bell wherever it is to be notified. And oh yeah, give it, please. If you're still here, I know you liked it, okay? Don't lie to me. So go ahead and give it ye old thumbs uppus. It's only one little clicky button. It's very easy to do and it helps me a lot. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.